Welcome to the Museum Roadshow. I'm Roger Engstrom, and today we're out at the farm of that used to belong to Harold and Aletha Olson. This is a century farm, and their daughters, Sally Olson Tuck and Ellen Olson Gilbert, are going to be telling us the history of the farm and also of the Riverside Resort, which became part of this farm in later years.
Well, in 1897, our great-grandparents, John and Wilhelmina Olson, who had come from Sweden just a few years before, purchased this farm. It included lakeshore, almost the entire lakeshore of South Melissa, and up almost up to the Dakota Beach area. And in 1900, they gave for $1 for the township to build the little District 80 schoolhouse. So that was a very important part of the community. And then in 1917, our grandfather, Charles, and our grandmother, Ella, purchased this farm from his parents, and they were on this farm until the late 1940s. Several of the brothers who were raised here, Charles, our grandfather, and Axel and Martin, all had ended up having resorts around the lake. So that's how it works into the development of Riverside Place. The family had a lot of interest in the beauty of this area and in seeing that the beauty was enjoyed by many different people that came from other states and other areas. And then our parents, then Harold and Aletha Olson, purchased the farm, and but earlier they had purchased land from the farm estate to start building Riverside Place, which we'll discuss in a moment. So this farm was then owned by Harold and Aletha, and Aletha just died in 2008. So this farm has been in this family ever since 1897 until, actually still is. Our nephew, our oldest sister, Sue's son Mark, is buying this farm from us, and so we're thrilled that it's still in the family, and we hope it will be for many generations to come. Now, the farm was an integral part of the resort because this was sort of the headquarters for all the activity in terms of, you know, fixing up the boats every spring, and lots of laundry done in Shakespeare, our little woodshed over here, made into a laundry room. And Mother for years used the old Maytag Ringer washing machine. Ellen and I hung out many a load of laundry on the lines right back here. Had an old mangle in the porch that we used to iron the sheets for the resort. And Mother made endless number of cafe curtains to doll up the cottages. And Daddy worked hard to scrape the wooden boats and so forth. And Ellen, you may want to talk a little bit then about how the resort developed and then your part in it.
Yes. Our parents were both nurses. They both graduated from a school in Chicago, Illinois. And in order to buy their property and start their first cottage in 1936, they sold their only vehicles and took public transportation to their nursing jobs in Chicago so they could start their first cottage. And my mother was pregnant with me in 1936 in that fall when they built the first cottage. And then that first cottage, I think, was rented out in 1937, that summer. And my folks would live in other parts of the country in the winter, and then they'd come back here in the summer and run the resort. And then in 1978, my husband and I bought the resort for my parents. They were both in their 70s, and they were tired, and my mother still helped, but they wanted out from under the responsibility. So Orlo and I, both being teachers, we purchased the resort from my parents, and we ran that resort for 23 years. And we closed it in 2003. The rental of these cottages was a really good deal for big families. You could have sometimes 12, 14 people in one of these cottages. Most of them could sleep about 12 people. And they started out about $45 a week, and by the time Orlo and I sold the resort, sold the cottages, it was $750 a week. So it did go up in price, but never really out of sight, because most of these people had 2 or 3 families who came and took part and helped pay for the cottages. And so really the financial part of it was never an issue with any of the folks. But $45 a week was how we started out.
Eventually there were 5 structures, one of which was a duplex. So they were numbered, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's still how they were when Ellen and Orlo had the resort. And another thing that I think is such an important point about our resort, and not just our resort, but the ones that manage to stay in business, is every spring they may have to go into the bank and get a loan, or they'd saved up. They would invest every year in certain things that would improve the cottages, whether it was a new refrigerator or a new mattress, or, you know, expanding on a cottage. These were things that kept the resort alive, and when Ellen and Orlo took over in 1978, they did the same thing. They just kept improving every year where they could afford it. And that's why they stayed in business, because we would watch other resorts around the area, and they just kept going downhill and downhill and downhill, and they just couldn't stay in business because the buildings would deteriorate, and the appeal would be lost too because of the grounds and the condition. So we are proud of our folks and of Ellen and Orlo for having that vision of upkeep, and that was a great reason for the stability of the resort. And the fact that our resort customers came year after year after year. There was very, very little turnover. You could just about count every week. You say, well, this is the week that you know, the such and such family comes, and then the other families next week. So you just kind of counted the summer by the names of the people that came every year, and year in and year out.
Yes, I can still remember one of the most fun when we were kids, or when I was a kid, was that my folks would get in the car and we'd go to town to Lambert's Lumber Yard or to Stenerson's or to somewhere to get something new for the cottages, and that was always so exciting. And then when my husband and I took it over, we did a lot of business with Ace Hardware and Stenerson's, and it was always fun to do something to upgrade the resort. And the cottages are still in existence. They're all owned by individual families now, but they're still standing. And they were probably not really built to stand this long, but they are still there, and the people are enjoying them very much.